Okay, we got a new angle here. Gonna try this out. So we are going to be watching from Melody Sheep, The Sound of Space, a sonic adventure through other worlds, or something like that. Alright, here we go. Readjust myself, there we go. Is that a green apple?
The best marketing tagline in movie history might have been from the Ridley Scott film Alien. In space, no one can hear you scream.
Alien?
That phrase is true. And not only because of the distance from Earth, it has to do with how sound travels.
You don't have sound in space because sound requires molecules. You have to be
That would
able
be
to
terrifying.
move the molecules
Imagine you
with
just
the
fall in a
sound
black
waves,
hole or
and without
something.
the molecules, the sound
Burn
just
up in a
doesn't
nebula.
move.
Space is
That is
silent
loud.
because it's virtually empty.
There we go.
As few as 10 atoms in a cubic meter, compared to 10 trillion in our own atmosphere. And
Jeez.
without that thick soup of atoms, sound just has no way to travel. But billions of years ago, it was a different story. Not long after the Big Bang, the entire universe was a ball of hot plasma, thick enough for sound to pass through. Shockwaves from the formation of the universe rippled through space, creating a cosmic rumble deeper than anything our ears could detect. What you're hearing now are those actual sounds, decoded by researchers and pitched up to something we humans can hear. These are the first sounds ever created.
What?
Primordial stirrings from a newborn universe.
That's pretty cool. Well, I've always loved space stuff.
Today,
is
space
so
is a
cool.
lot bigger, a lot emptier, and a lot quieter. But we should be grateful, because if sound did travel through space, we would all be bombarded by a constant deafening explosion.
Oh, the sun?
The roar of the sun.
Okay.
Every moment, our sun blares trillions of watts of sound energy through its turbulent surface.
I used to read so many books about this kind of stuff.
If it wasn't muted by the vacuum of space, that sound would be as loud as a jackhammer here on Earth.
Jeez.
Luckily for us, we have the void of space to protect us. And we live in a world of amazing sonic diversity. The sandy deserts, the lush forests, the sound of the ocean, both on its surface and below.
I sometimes use
Our
ocean
home planet is a
sounds
rich
to fall asleep.
soundscape because our ears are perfectly in tune with it.
So
But
relaxing.
our little island of sound isn't the only one. There are whole other worlds of sound out there, in the skies,
Sorry.
the oceans, and the rocks
I
of
don't know
other
if you can tell,
planets,
but I just sort of woke
and
up.
far beyond.
Oh, there's the title. Nice. Quite the intro.
What is sound? It's the vibrations of
Dr. Keith
molecules
Knoll.
in the air.
NASA.
It's a pressure wave. Sound takes on many forms, but the kind that we're most familiar with is pressure waves moving through gas.
Helium.
Sound travels faster through lighter gases like helium,
making our voices sound higher pitched.
When the air is colder or made of heavier gases like sulfur hexafluoride,
Sound travels more slowly.
but there's even more to it than that.
Sound can be
Sound like Darth Vader.
transmitted through any kind of physical medium. So if you are in a swimming pool, you can still hear sound. That's being transmitted through water. Quakes are essentially sound waves being transmitted through the solid earth.
Our experience of sound here on Earth is only a sliver of what's possible. Each planet is a unique soundscape, shaped by its particular makeup. So let's go from planet to planet in our solar system to find out what the surface of each one would sound like to our ears.
Okay.
To be clear, you'd pretty much die instantly everywhere but here.
Not pretty much.
But
I think
we're gonna pretend to have superhuman
more so,
powers
like-
that will keep us alive.
you're going to die no matter what you
So
do.
with that disclaimer out of the way,
Without a suit.
let's start closest to the sun.
Mercury.
Places like
No
Mercury
atmosphere.
and these rocky bodies with no atmospheres would be similar to being in space. There would not be much sound, if any.
Like the moon. Well, I guess the moon has... does the moon have an
With its
atmosphere?
near vacuum surface
I should look that up.
conditions, it might seem like Mercury would be completely
gravity.
devoid of sound. But it's there. Not in the air, but in the rocks.
Oh. Okay.
Scientists have found evidence that the planet is seismically active.
Oh, Mercury quakes or
So
something?
if you put your ear against the ground, you might catch the sound of something strange. A Mercury quake.
Okay, yeah, there we go. I was like... What could it be, though? You know? It's Mercury. There's nothing there.
Next up, Venus.
Apparently it's...
Because you have this
Spin
really
is
dense
reversed
atmosphere,
compared
much
to us.
denser than Earth's, the sound would tend toward what things sound like when you're underwater.
93 times Earth's. Jeez.
If you could imagine something in between air and water, that kind of density, running your hand through that, and you would feel that.
Looks murky. Very pleasant.
If you were to just materialize in that environment of 900 degrees Fahrenheit and 100 times our atmospheric pressure, you would first be crushed,
Oof.
and then you would probably just burn up completely.
Yeah.
One thing we do know about Venus is that it has lightning.
Right.
So you might hear thunder.
That's cool. Yellow lightning. It's like the
It
Flash.
turns out that Venus is one place we have real audio from.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
In the early 80s, the Soviet
hearing about
lander
that, for
Venera
sure.
14 successfully landed on the surface.
Well, I was a kid, but yeah.
It survived for nearly an hour before shutting down.
An hour.
During that time, it picked up these eerie sounds of the Venusian winds. But what about something more human?
That was cool.
What would my voice sound like?
The denser atmosphere would tend to lower the pitch, but the hotter air would act to increase the speed of sound, making my voice sound higher. It's a strange scene to imagine.
Sounds pretty cool.
I'm on Venus, in this ethereal world that's a mix between a gas-like atmosphere and water. I'm almost floating.
That is so weird.
My voice, the thunder. It's all slightly muffled and distorted as it travels through the thick atmosphere.
Doesn't it have volcanoes too? Yeah.
Our next stop is a polar opposite sonic environment.
Mars? I've seen Mars from here. Or
Sound on Mars
City
is going
lights
to kind of be the
around here, so-
opposite direction of Venus
I've definitely
because
seen
the
it.
atmosphere on Mars is very, very thin compared to Earth's, and so there's just not very many molecules.
Super thin.
The wind speed can get very high, as high as hurricane force at the surface sometimes.
Jeez.
So imagine 100-mile-per-hour wind on Earth, you'd be almost blown off your feet.
Yeah.
If you were standing on the surface there in Mars, you'd feel it, but it would feel like a gentle breeze here on the surface of Earth.
You wouldn't necessarily hear the wind itself. You would hear the dust that's being picked up, and it would be banging against the faceplate of your spacesuit.
That's cool.
We wouldn't hear too much. Maybe if you were scuffling along on the surface, you could maybe very faintly hear that sound as you were clawing at the ground.
But Mars is another world where we don't have to rely purely on speculation. After sending robots for decades, we finally received the first real audio from the surface of Mars, recorded by the Perseverance rover in 2021. These are the sounds of the Martian winds and the clunk of the rover's wheels over the planet's surface.
It's kind of
Sounds that our ancestors could have only dreamed of hearing. Wind and rocks are one thing, but what would our voices sound like? In this thin atmosphere,
Super
speech
thin.
would sound quieter and wouldn't travel as
2.6
far.
of Earth's.
And while the low-density air would usually make our
Surface
voices
Sound higher. The colder temperatures would
Slow down the sound, and the pitch would
balance out.
Huh.
The biggest change would come from the composition of the air.
I wasn't expecting that.
The atmosphere of Mars is mostly carbon dioxide, which
Yeah.
absorbs high frequencies. So our voices would become muffled and distant.
But it would be
If our voices don't carry far, how about a piano?
level. It wouldn't go higher or lower. Okay, that's cool.
In the faint Martian air, it would sound like something you might hear in a dream.
It does sound cool. Imagine a piano on Mars. So cool.
Let's continue on to the outer gas giants, starting with the biggest.
Jupiter. Variable. Yeah,
Jupiter
no doubt.
doesn't have a solid surface.
It's a big red spot, though.
The whole planet is
Jeez.
made up of gas that gets denser and denser the deeper you go, eventually becoming a liquid.
Liquid.
The pressure and temperature variations are what cause those beautiful swirling bands.
It looks so cool.
Depending on where you were inside its layers, the soundscape would change drastically.
I heard you could fit 1 million Earths inside of Jupiter comfortably.
The interesting thing on Jupiter is that the pressure and the temperatures where the cloud decks are actually not so inhospitable.
What?
You have these super powerful lightning bolts
Yeah.
where you'd hear echoes of echoes of echoes just back and forth.
I don't know what direction it's coming from. That's pretty cool. Saturn!
So what about the rest of the outer
Seen Saturn
planets?
through a telescope.
Like Jupiter, Saturn,
I saw the
Uranus, and
rings.
Neptune
That was
are
pretty
mostly
cool.
made of hydrogen and helium. Those two gases are lighter than Earth's atmosphere, so our voices would generally sound higher pitched. But each
Variable
layer
for all
of
of them.
each
Jeez,
planet would
okay.
provide its own unique sonic experience,
It's so interesting.
different worlds of sound. From inside the raging storms of Saturn to the frigid methane clouds of Uranus.
depths of Neptune.
Whoa. That is blue. Oh. Blue's one of my favorite colors.
But what about our old friend Pluto?
It
How's it going,
is
Pluto?
probably the thinnest bound atmosphere that we know, but it also looks really complex. I mean, it's got layers. It's pretty different because
That's
the
an
temperature is so
atmosphere.
low.
Not far out.
Nitrogen is an ice. Carbon monoxide is mostly an ice. That's probably the weirdest, most different kind of place in terms of thinking about how composition, temperature, pressure would affect the sound.
There's one more world worth a listen. Not a planet, but a moon.
Titan.
Saturn's moon Titan is the only
Yeah.
one we know of with a true atmosphere.
So cool.
It's even thicker than ours. It's freezing cold, and it rains liquid methane.
Another murky planet.
In 2005, the Huygens space probe recorded audio as it descended through the thick atmosphere to the surface.
At least it won't be crushed.
What you're hearing is incredible. The sound
Like
of the
Venus.
winds from a tiny moon nearly 1 billion miles away. If you were standing on its surface, the soundscape might be eerily familiar. You might hear the sound of flowing liquid methane. Not a waterfall, but a methanofall.
That's an interesting term.
When you think of space, it's mostly space,
Yeah.
where there's no medium to transmit sound. And yet, it's perfect for light. Light fills the universe, but sound doesn't.
The whole universe is connected by light. Light anywhere in the universe can travel to anywhere else in the universe. But with sound, you really are 1 trillion different islands of sound.
We think of Earth as special because it can support life. But it goes much further than that. It's one of the true places in the universe where sound is abundant. And all of that sound has impacted life on an evolutionary level.
If you look at life on Earth, being able to hear something seems to be a very big advantage, biologically, right? Because you can become aware of either predators or prey or food sources. So alien life in the universe would probably have an advantage to hear things also. In whatever planet or ocean or atmosphere they
Oh,
live in.
jeez.
These aliens would probably perceive sound in a totally different way. A way that's in tune with their own environment. And perhaps hear completely different frequencies. Sound as we understand it is so unbelievably rare. Yet, it's abundant right here, within this thin blanket of atmosphere. But if we travel straight up, it goes away very quickly. It gets quieter and quieter until it's gone.
Wow. Sorry. Wow, that was so cool. Very interesting experience there. All through sound. That was pretty cool. Alright, we'll see you in the next one.